Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Cold Case Christmas. In this episode, we're investigating the unsolved murder of a 13-year-old girl called Lindsay Rimer. She went to buy a box of cornflakes from her local shop and she just disappeared. 5 months later, her body was found accidentally by 2 workers in the Rochdale Canal. She'd been weighted down with a 20-pound rock. To this day, this horrific crime that rocked the small town of Hebden Bridge is unsolved. Let's talk about it. Lindsay was just a normal girl in a normal family living in the small town of Hebden Bridge. This November, just gone, marks 30 years of her murder. And to mark that 30 years, the BBC last month did a piece on Lindsay's case. So I'm going to be reading some bits and pieces from the BBC article. Also, I want to publicise this really interesting video from a channel called Days of Horror. It's really interesting because they talk about cases by going to the scenes. So I'm going to play some clips from this video to tell the story. Hebden Bridge is in West Yorkshire, here in the northwest of England. Hebden Bridge in 2015 had a population of just 4,500. I couldn't find a figure for how many people lived there in 1994 when this horrific event happened. The BBC describe it as a hippie-style town. Don't really know what that means. Okay, so what happened? It was the 7th of November, 1994. It was raining, but Lindsay fancied a bowl of cornflakes. Cornflakes, for those who are unfamiliar, is a very well-known breakfast cereal. But you can have cornflakes at any time of the day or night. So Lindsay went out to buy a box of cornflakes. Lindsay left her house on Cambridge Street. Her dad was on the phone, so she didn't say goodbye, she just popped out. It was approximately a 10-minute walk to the local spa shop. On the way there, she called into the trades club, where she knew her mother was having a drink with a friend. So her mother said to her, "Do you want to stay and have a glass of pop with us?" Lindsay said, "No, I'm going to go and buy some cornflakes." Her mother gave her some money and Lindsay was on her way. And that was the last time any of her family had any contact with her. That was around 10 p.m. When her mother returned a little bit later, she didn't see Lindsay, but she just assumed that Lindsay had gone to bed. She didn't think to check her room, she just thought she'd gone to bed. And it was only the next morning when they realised that Lindsay wasn't in her room and it didn't look like her bed had been slept in. And where were the cornflakes that she went to buy? Well, CCTV in the spa shop shows that she did get to the shop, she did buy a box of cornflakes. But then what? This was a short walk through a very quiet town on a rainy night. But it was very early on the 8th of November that her parents realised that she'd never made it home, because the local newsagents called them. Lindsay was a paper girl. I don't know what that term is called in other countries, but delivering newspapers, right, to people's houses. And she hadn't turned in for a round. They then realised Lindsay wasn't in her room, the cornflakes that she went to buy weren't there, and the bag that she used to put the papers in to go and deliver them was in the kitchen. Lindsay's sister Kate said they knew straight away something had happened. They called the police, and the police then set about retracing Lindsay's steps. As I said, CCTV footage in the shop showed that she made it there, and she did buy a box of cornflakes. She was spotted a couple of minutes later by 2 people on a bus, and they recognised her and said that she was leaning against a wall near to the town's memorial garden. But then there was nothing else. No sight, no sound of her. at all. In the early days of her disappearance, the police and the community joined forces and there was a massive search. They combed the entire area. 3 close friends moved in with the family. They spent nights brainstorming. They had like a mini incident room, I guess you would say, in the house. They took down potential leads that they shared with the police, but they stored everything. A week into the search, Kate stood in for her sister. They looked very much alike because the police wanted to do a reconstruction of Lindsay's proposed walk to the shop to see if that would jog anybody's memory. Kate said, "I was insistent I wanted to take part. She was my build and we looked similar. I felt it was the least I could do to try to find her. I look back at photos of myself at the time and the reconstruction and I look so young. I don't recognise myself, but I recognise the terror in my face." As the investigation wore on, Gordon and Jerry, Lindsay's parents, became more and more despondent. But the police and the community and the family, they were just hoping for that breakthrough. There was lots of rumours. Now, this was the days before social media, but still, there was rumours coming in from various parts of the country saying that Lindsay had been spotted. So there was always that little bit of hope that Lindsay, for some reason, had gone off. She's only 13, she hadn't taken anything with her at all, but there was that small hope that she was just out there somewhere. It wasn't like the town was completely silent. There were people around. You know, it was 10 p.m, but still, there was people around. Nobody heard any kicking or screaming or anything like that. So it has to be concluded that Lindsay perhaps got into a vehicle of somebody she knew. Somebody known to the family even, which is terrifying because it's such a small town. Like, everybody knew everybody else. Everybody knew the Rimer family. Terrifying. So the family were just looking over their shoulders the whole time. Lindsay was a cautious girl. She wasn't stupid. So again, she wouldn't have got into a vehicle with anybody she didn't know. Given that it was raining, maybe somebody saw her and offered to give her a lift home. Except they didn't take her home. Now, there was a suspicious sighting of a red Honda Civic. It had been stolen from the city of Leeds, which is a few miles away, and a Honda Civic that nobody recognised was seen in the area the night that Lindsay disappeared. So this was a breakthrough. They now had to find this Honda Civic and its driver. This is how they found out that a Honda Civic had been stolen from Leeds. They checked out the owner of that vehicle and they'd not done anything untoward. Like, they were cleared. I mean, look, everybody was a suspect in Hebden Bridge, but some random person in Leeds who just happened to have their car stolen, they had to be checked out, but they were good. The family were all checked out, but police was working with them. They knew that the family hadn't done anything to Lindsay. So the cops were like, look, the driver of this Honda Civic, the person who stole that vehicle from Leeds, is our guy. The months roll by and still nothing. Until the following April, 5 months later, Lindsay's body was found a mile out of the town centre in the Rochdale Canal. 2 council workers had been clearing debris from the area of Rawdon Mill Lock. And they were kind of dredging the areas, lots of debris and stuff in canals. People throw stuff in. You know, there's all sorts down there. So they were dredging this area, and at first they thought it was a sheep that had managed to fall in the canal, because sometimes sheep do. But no, this was a human body. They were absolutely horrified because this body had a 20-pound rock tied to it. So they called the police, tests were done, and lo and behold, sadly, it was Lindsay Rimer. Kate said, I remember it clearly. I was sat in the park watching my daughter play. My dad walked down and sat next to me. They said they'd found a body, and we needed to go back to the house. The body was badly decomposed. It had been down there for 5 months. The police did think that she was murdered on that night, and they think that she was murdered in that area because the rock was a piece of debris from the canal. They were able to ascertain that that rock belonged to that scene. That rock hadn't been brought, you know, with Lindsay's body. And there was the site of an old mill. The police theory was that Lindsay wasn't transported there dead, that she was actually killed in or around the old mill, and the rock conveniently was there, and they tied her to this rock with the idea that she was never going to surface. They were able to ascertain that Lindsay had been strangled. There was no signs of sexual assault. However, due to the decomposition of the body, nobody can be absolutely sure. But she was clothed. Now, whether she'd been sexually assaulted and then she'd redressed, we just don't know those answers. There was no way that, you know, forensics could be done on a body that had been in water for that long. Over the years, the case has remained open, and there have been moments where a breakthrough was just right there on the tip of their fingers. For example, in April 2016, scientific advances had enabled them to create a DNA profile, which may lead them back to the killer. And a 63-year-old man, so someone who would have been in his 40s in 1994, was arrested in November 2016. And further, a 68-year-old from Bradford, another town in West Yorkshire, was arrested in April 17, but both were later released without charge. There wasn't enough evidence to pin anybody to that scene. So 3 decades on, Jerry, Gordon, Kate, and Lindsay's younger sister, Juliet, just live with this knowledge that most likely someone known to Lindsay ended her life. Juliet was only very young when Lindsay went missing, and it saddens her that she's got no living memory of Lindsay. She was just a little baby when Lindsay disappeared. All Juliet's memories of Lindsay are all reconstructed only in the context of her disappearance and her death. She talks about a childhood where her family were in a perpetual cycle of grief. And the shadow of Lindsay's murder still looms over Hebden Bridge. It weighs heavily on the detectives who worked that case. Maybe one day there'll be an answer. The detectives now leading up the inquiry say police are still committed to finding the killer or killers and getting justice for Lindsay and her family. Detective Chief Inspector James Entwistle said loyalties change around people who know things. Science moves on. There's always an opportunity and always a drive because this is a relentless pursuit for the truth. Kate said, we're stuck in this overwhelm all the time because we don't have closure. We can only move on when we know who is responsible for killing our sister. Someone absolutely knows what happened. Loyalties change. Was there someone in your life in 1994? Maybe they've passed away now. Maybe you're able to talk about it now and you weren't then. Well, contact the cops. That little piece of information that you might have in the back of your mind, that might be the thing that leads the cops to the killer of Lindsay Rimer. She deserves justice. Her family deserve justice. So if you know anything at all, please say so. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts about this tragic case, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.